Welcome to the Terri Talks. I'm your host, Terri Brown, and I'll be talking on Tuesdays with real people about real challenges and solutions in real estate investing. I won't belabor the moment too much longer, but I do want to say what I said at the top of the other one, that I am so grateful to be here with you guys on Mondays because it gives us an opportunity to collectively to come together and own stuff. Right. And not just, assets, not just, well, we shouldn't be owning people, but it gives us an opportunity to own our own narrative. It gives us an opportunity to own our own stories and what we want to see happen, own our time, our experiences, our relationships. So I am always elated when I get an opportunity to sit and learn with you all and to grow with you all. We're building. And here's the one thing I know technically about building. Sometimes you have to put a stick in, let it sit for a minute, pour some concrete, let that sit for a minute, pull some more, level that out, pour some more concrete. There's a process is what I'm saying. And so as long as you guys will be here, we will continue to be here because we need to see some things take off for all of us individually, our families, and our community as a whole. With that, I will remind you about your benefits in the collective. As a collective member, you have a ton of benefits. You should make sure you're taking care of them. And one of the things I said that was key important, I'm not going to go over everything that I said, but I think is essential that you have coaches here. You have strategy sessions that are available to you. And we already know a confused mind does nothing, right? And so if you're not moving along, it could be perhaps your vision needs to be a little bit clearer, right? You know what we say, the vision makes the decision. And if you're not decided on a few things, then perhaps your vision is a little shaky and you need clarity and you need direction and you need guidance. I actually had a session with one of our members earlier, and those were her words at the end, that this is what I got, and it felt good, right? And so you want to take part in that amongst all of the other things that are made available and accessible to you. The second thing that I'll say, again, not going to go through everything that I said initially, but don't forget, we all should be bringing in, monthly to vetted businesses. Right? If we are, again, going to own a narrative, change the narrative, then there are some things that we need to do. And we need to be able to circulate our dollars with each other, right? And so we all should be adding to vetted businesses to our directory. It's not enough to say, I don't know, I don't have. No, this is how we do it. This is how things happen. This is how you shift the marketplace, right? Now, if you have somebody that you can't vet, well, you have vetted and they don't do decent, their business is a little shaky, which again, Kirsten has if it's not in the back office, but she has a guide on what we're looking for the businesses to be added to the directory, then they need to be over here so that they can build better businesses and better systems, and they can get the resources and the support that they need. And so with that, we all should be, you guys are affiliates, you should be getting somebody to come in. And it would be awesome if we can all add at least one person a month to the collective, right? We're stronger together and it allows us to do more. And so when we get into investing, some people won't even be able to do it because they may not have the long cash. However, when you have multiple people, then that lessens that I want to say burden, because none of this is a burden. It lessens the intensity of what you need and what you need to bring to the table. And so, listen, let's make sure, particularly in this season, I do not know if everybody is paying attention, but there is a lot that is happening, and it's happening now it's just happening. Case in point, and I'm going to hit it and quit it. You had a son of first of all, let's just talk about why Shedeur Sanders went 144 in the draft. Unquestionably, right? One of the best athletes, skilled, talented, well-rounded, all together. And I'm a little mad. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and my Steelers need a quarterback, and they ain't take them. But that's another conversation and fight for another day. But the undercurrent of it is, oh, well, it's because of who his father is. When did that become a prerequisite? In fact, in other cultures, it's just understood you're there because of who your father is. You don't even have to have no skills or talents, but you there because your father there, right? And so, there's a lot of things happening on a micro and a macro scale that we need to be prepared for. And this is where it gets done in community. And so lean in, tap in. You got a library of resources in the back to build a sustainable business, to start investing in real estate, and to be on a path of leaving legacy and generational wealth. With that, the last announcement is around our upcoming boot camp, right? If you know somebody who's trying to get into real estate and they're like, oh, I don't have the money, or, I want to get in it. I got a little bit of money. They need to be at this wholesalers boot camp, or if you have an investor who is cash poor, right? They're not liquid enough. They need to be here. Heck, not just an investor, anybody, right? That right now we know that it's going to be important to have cash reserves, right? And here, the people who relied on credit and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul on credit, it's getting ready to be a hard thing. They're working right now behind the scenes to yank some of those protections from lending agencies. Why? So that the 1% will have greater access to it, right? And so people who don't, then what happens, right? They're going to tighten the reins there. Well, this is an opportunity. People who don't have no skill, they should be at the wholesaler boot camp. You can't make money without investing money. And I reduced it down. It's usually $597. I made it at, I think, $147, something very nominal. And if they're a collective member, they could sign up to be a collective member and get in for $70. There's no reason why that nobody should be in here when they know they are cash poor, right? Because cash is king. Even though, there's a thing out there about how the strength of the dollar, but it's still the lay of the land, and you need it. And you need it to be able to do some other things. Somebody that got money sitting somewhere in a bank. The way these banks are bellying up, one just filed for bankruptcy, right? And guess what happens? If your amount is under a certain amount, it's not secured. Or if it's over a certain amount, it's not secured, right? So you want to be able to put it into things that even when the market shifts, it's sitting in something that's income producing, right? And so you need to make sure that you have your folks here. If they're elderly or older, we got the stuff that you can do inside of a wholesale process that you can do it from your phone, from your computer, right? They can refer people and make money if we close on those particular deals. There is no reason why, if you have not met your revenue goals, or somebody that's struggling right now, somebody that lost their job and they got time, they might be getting somewhat of a severance pay or some, employment benefits, that's going to run out. So you want to get ahead of that. You want to encourage them to get ahead of that. And so they need to sign up for the boot camp. The link is in the chat. Make sure you share that out. And again, if you're affiliate, all right. So without further ado, we are going to bring to the stage one of my attorneys that has been with me almost or a little over 10 years, if not 10 years. She is a believer. She is a business attorney, and that is super important, right? You don't need a malpractice attorney if you're trying to build a business, right? A sports attorney, well, they have some business acumen, but you want somebody that specifically specializes in the area that you're in, right? And business is one. She's real estate investing. She has a ton of real estate investor clients. And so she is the legal diva, as she calls herself. But broader than that, she is just well gifted, skilled, talented, and know exactly what to do. I had someone that tried to sue me because they got scared and pulled out of a real estate opportunity at the last minute. And we responded back to them, and it was quick. right? And so they knew that we weren't playing. And so you want to be able to have accessibility to that if you're going to not only build, but you got to be able to protect it. Remember, I'm always saying it's one thing to make it, but can you keep it? So again, without further ado, Toni Moore.
Hello. I clap for myself. Okay. Hey, I'm gonna just be like, hey, Dr. Terri. Like, if you want that, I got a couple of clients that'll hook you up. Okay. I'm just saying. But hey, Dr. Terri, how y'all doing? Hello, Dr. Terry's community. Nice to talk to y'all. When Dr. Terri asked me to come on board and have a conversation about asset protection, then I showed up, because what I do know for sure is the worst time to ever learn about law is in the middle of a lawsuit or a cease and desist notice or, a business divorce. And I know that most people skip through law because they say, what, success loves speed. I'm like, success needs strategy. Okay. And because you've created a business entity, then it's always good to have a business lawyer who's been there, done that, seen that. I've been around for the block for a while. And I started off doing litigation. Things I used to do, I don't do no more. 25 years plus later, because I got sworn in 1999. I don't do anymore, but I do know as a previous litigator that the best thing that you can do is be very strategic in your building. So today I'm going to talk about how to CYA in business, cover your assets in business, but I also am a kingdom woman, and CYA can be a lot of stuff, like cover your anointing, create your abundance, you know what I mean? Command your authority, a lot of stuff we don't always get a chance to appreciate in business, but it's not just one thing. What I notice is that a lot of us, we do the one thing. Oh, I started a business. Oh, I did real estate. Oh, I do wholesaling. Oh, I need a trademark. We get pieces. But, as a person who ultimately helps people walk through from startup to succession planning, including trust and estates in 3 states, soon to be 4, because I have to move over to Georgia. But today, if you want, I want to share my presentation. So who am I? I'm Toni Moore. I'm a business lawyer. I do a lot with regards to business compliance. Wife, mom, speaker, personal LLC for me is long lasting currency strategist. What I do know is that there's a lot of people who start a business, but they don't protect their assets, right? They work with their family members, but they don't protect their assets. They have an author, speaker, coaching, real estate, doing all the things, but they don't appreciate the legalities that is pretty much what the legalities governing their realities in business, right? And sadly, there's one person said, Toni, I know what you're trying to get from me, but I'm trying to go for the money. I'm trying to go for the bag. And I'm like, I get it, with regards to going for the money and going for the bag. But when you truly, truly understand and appreciate that, guess what? It's up to you to protect yourself. It's up to you to cover your anointing, especially if God has given you the power to attain wealth and you have a wealth building mindset and things of that nature. Then you have to also understand that, what? Someone in your family, if they're going to be a millionaire, rich is going to be in your family, if wealth is going to be in your family, health dimensions and things of that nature, then at the end of the day, you have to understand. You got to learn it, learn the law, leverage the law, right? And then you got to be very strategic with regards to the law. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a bad situation. And that's one of the things that I don't want to happen to you. Okay? So take a screenshot of this or whatever, however y'all do it. I want you to do it, because this is the biggie, is when you are covering your assets in business, then you're doing the following things, right? You can talk to my girl over and over again and be like, is this what Toni tells you to do? Absolutely. She can tell you. We talked about it enough times with regards to even probably like the past 5 years, we've always been talking about having a holding company. We always talk about that. We always talk about having a holding company, why you need to have a holding company, why you need to separate your assets from the holding company and the operating company, why you need to do a lot of things with regards to it. Because when you do that, when you appreciate what I'm trying to help you understand and appreciate, you understand that there's rules. Yeah. But there's strategy as well, rules with regards to having a holding company that does not operate. That way you will protect yourself when you have a holding company that does not operate. And then also having a holding company in different states. People do that a lot with regards to it because it's a holding company. It's not doing any work. It's just in different states and it's a holding company. Having an operating company, ideally in the state that you do most of your work in. Otherwise, every time you're doing business in like Some people are like, oh, well, I want to go to Delaware. I want to work and I want my holding company in Delaware. That's great. But your operating company should be in the state that you operate in. Okay. With regards to it. And it's the one that you're doing strategy and consulting, you're doing management, whatever you're doing in that state, even with regards to operating company, including a nonprofit organization. They call it organization, but guess what? It's always with regards to articles of incorporation, because a nonprofit is what is it? It is a corporation, right? And also with regards to covering your assets in business, it's having business agreements, a lot of business agreements. It's not just having an independent contractor agreement. Maybe your independent contractor agreement. Maybe you have a wholesaler's agreement. Maybe you have a coaching agreement. Maybe you also have a consulting agreement. Perhaps maybe you also have a management agreement. Perhaps maybe you have a licensing agreement and the name, image, and licensing agreement. Those are so many different types of agreements. You may even have an agreement where you have a facilitator agreement. Right now, I'm working with a nonprofit that has a theater, and then they want to have some sort of splits between their consultants and splits with regards to some of their employees, but we have to carve out those different types of agreements. Someone recently asked me for a form. But the form, I said, well, what's a form? Like, a form is a fill in the blank. I was like, when you contact an attorney, we're not giving you a form. We're giving a contractual agreement that probably somebody already negotiated. Somebody already asked. We probably carved it out and stuff like that. I sell templates, right? We sell CYA, cover your assets, legal templates and toolkits and things of that nature, but it's not a form. A form is something fill in the blanks, but a contractual agreement, even if I give you a template, you still have to review that agreement. You still need to review the promises and the proceeds of that agreement. You still need to review whether or not you have an indemnification clause, or whether or not you have an arbitration clause, or whether or not you have something in place with regards to assignment or non-assignment, whether or not you guys are going to be JV partners or not JV partners. All of that conversation has to be part of the agreement if you want to protect your assets. And the conversation is with regards to CYA in business, how to cover your assets in business. So you need those things in place, right? Even with regards to trademarking of your brand. A lot of people are filing trademark applications because someone told them to. I ask people, if you want to get to the point where you want to go from generic to godly, you got to tap into what God has said and manifested here on earth, right? So you got to seek, know, ask, cover yourself, cover your anointing, cover your, cultivate the thing that is inside of you, the authority to command your day and the authority to create a business that is going to allow you to have a financial breakthrough, right? A lot of people, they come up with a brand, but it's not distinctive. I told someone today, you adding an extra name to a registered brand is going to get rejected. She found out the hard way. She went to something like Trademark Engine. I tell her all the time, whether it's LegalZoom, Trademark Engine, somewhere online, they're not necessarily giving you strategy. If you think law is just about forms, you got it all mistaken. If you feel as though wealth is an assignment in your family, then you have to understand and appreciate that you got to do what the wealthy people do. And guess what they do? They seek wise counsel. When you stop seeking wise counsel, it's going to become problematic for you. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to understand and appreciate that, guess what? Wealth is a decision. It's a dimension. It's something that you have to understand and appreciate. If you're creating that wealth, if you understand and appreciate that you have a brand inside of you that will allow you to break through and be more bankable, then you got to be distinctive. So much so that when it comes to your brand, the answer to who is you. And when you distinguish yourself so much so, then you create something that is worthy of protection. And then you'll find out more about how to file a trademark application or seek wise counsel in filing a trademark application, so that, guess what? If someone starts to copy what you do, it's not a form of imitation. It's really an invitation for litigation. Okay? Because sometimes people are like, oh, copying is a form of flattery. No, it's not. It's fakery. It's someone who is pretty much coveting what God gave to you. And if you don't have a trademark application that turns into a registration, even when you send a cease and desist, they're just going to ignore you. You want that to happen? No, you want to understand and appreciate that. Yeah, people will come to steal, kill, destroy, replicate, try to take derivatives without a license and agreement. But if it's protected, if it's legally protected, then you have an opportunity to cease and desist and send out a letter that means something. Even with copyright registration, similarly with the copyright registration, you created it. Whether you created a speaking program, a coaching program, if you created something with regards to a keynote, if you created a song, if you created a proprietary framework, if you created something that people see it, they like it, they know it, they trust it, they need it, a certification, even with regards to, I hear a lot of people talk about Profit First, he created a certification program, and I'm sure he trademarked the name of that program. And now if someone wants to learn, they have to take his program, they have to go through his facilitator program, and then they can have a license and agreement opportunity to utilize his intellectual property. Similarly, the same way he does, the same way, so many other people do, the same way you do as well with a copyright registration. Right now, if it's all in your head, then in order to turn an idea into intellectual property, it needs to be a recordation of what you know. A recordation means that you take it out of your head and you put it in, you write it down with your hand, write the vision, write the provision, to make it plain, and then you file at copyright.gov, the copyright registration, showing that you are the owner of that intellectual property, right? Whether it's a song, whether it's a play, whether it's a curriculum, whether it's a certification program. If you're a software developer, you have code, all of that stuff. If you do not have a receipt of ownership, someone will probably try to take derivatives of it, and it's going to be harder for you to protect yourself legally in court without a receipt of ownership. I want you to get the receipt. Having a limited liability company compliance plan, sometimes we call it SOP. Sometimes, having those in place with regards to having certainty as to what happens if, there's someone wants to get equity in your company, or they want a JV partner. What does that look like? Having a compliance plan with regards to if you have members, can all of your members pretty much, write a contract or take money out of the bank account, or is there a protocol? Is there a policy in place with regards to it? For my nonprofit people, because I'm a business lawyer, so is whether for profit or nonprofit, it doesn't matter to me. It's just making sure that it's legal, right? So having that compliance plan in place, what does that look like? Do you have policies? Do you have with regards to a conflict of interest policy? Do you have something in place if you're actually going to work with a board member or not? If someone's going to whistleblow, is there a whistleblower policy or not? Is there a banking policy? If there's a credit card policy? And we see it on the nonprofit side. My thinking is, if you want to take ownership of your business, even if it is a limited liability company, then you need to corporatize your assets, right? Because here's the thing. When you want to seek money and you want to get funding and you want to establish that you're bankable, guess what? Everyone is going to do an assessment as to whether or not you're running a business like a business person. So you might as well, you might as well just understand and appreciate in running your business like a business person. Someone's going to ask you, well, what's your tax return? Someone's going to ask you, like, what's your executive statement? What's going to be with regards to your business plan? What do you have in place to establish that you're about that business and not just about being hustled? So when you go from hustle to CEO, then you understand that you got to corporatize your business, corporatize your assets with regards to it. Having a succession plan. I was working with individuals, and you can see I'm going through the different types of succession planning now. And a lot of people would say, hey, can I get a will? Can I get a will for my mom? Mom is 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old. She's now worried about Medicaid. She did not take advantage of the fact that she started a business and had a legacy continuity plan. Mom probably didn't understand and appreciate what she needed to do with regards to having the limited liability company operating and a holding company taking advantage of her copyright registrations, even though mom was probably a singer or a songwriter or probably a musician, right? So what I did was, when I started getting older and start picking and choosing, how we pick and choose our clients. I was like, you know what? I want to work with business owners. I want to work with legacy minded business owners who understand and appreciate that, one, wealth is an assignment, two, that they can expand through entrepreneurship. And then I can also help them because I've already helped individuals on the compliance side of employee benefits. I've helped executives with regards to their executive employee benefit plans, help individuals like big companies like I think they're at $1 billion now, $1 billion company, which is the American Bible Society, which, by the way, is a very, very, very rich nonprofit that their mission is to translate the Bible in every single dialect. And I think at one point they found like over 2,400 different dialects. So that is their big mission, and they had so much money. a business lawyer who had a master's in taxation and really, really liked helping individuals go from startup to succession planning, including estate and trust, right? So having a succession plan in place, when I start talking to my clients with regards to it, and they're like, well, I want to have a trust or I want to have a succession plan. I was like, got it. So I was like, okay, so you have an inventory of your business. You have an inventory of your contracts. Do you also have an identification of who the beneficiaries are? And more importantly, who's the second in command? If you disappear for 2 weeks, who's the second in command? If you get sick, who's the second in command? If you have a business continuity plan, that's great. But if you get sick, and you have issues, who is the second in command? And if you're not married, who's the second in command? If you have an older spouse, who's the second in command? In the ideal, you have a secondary person and a third person and maybe possibly a fourth person. You may even take it to the part where I had one of my clients. She had 2 people. And then in her ideal situation, once her children reached a certain age and started buying and selling real estate or created a business making at least 6 figures, then they could now become the board of governors of their family legacy trusts. Come on now. That was a beautiful thing. And I love to be able to facilitate something like that. So having a succession plan for your business. Is someone going to buy it? Are you going to transfer it over to your family legacy trust? Or are you going to sell it to the highest bidder? And if you have members, do they have a first right of refusal? See, all of those conversations most people are not thinking of because they stay in the entree so long, or they start like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different businesses and don't really think about it. But here's the thing. I want you to always think about there's somebody out there. If wealth is your assignment and you feel like you're assigned to wealth and you know that wealth is a dimension, then I want you to understand what wealthy people do. One of the wealthy people do, they down with OPP, other people's profits, and they use the business credit and they leverage loans in the SBA. You know what I mean? But not only that, but once you get to a certain point, you create a business that somebody wants to buy, and then you can leverage that business, right? And you start making enough money, then people who have a family office, who are brokers or CPAs or accountants or even lawyers who have family office services, they will help you to understand and appreciate how to better manage your money. Okay. And I met a few people and how they ended up, they literally went like us from startup to financial success because they created an intellectual property. They created an intellectual property, a software. They created a design. They got really good in wholesaling. They created a REIT, a real estate investment trust. They created something that allow other people to eat from that table. And then of course, with that family office system in place, they usually also have as part of their wealthy consulting team is either a tax attorney or an estate planning attorney, or even a estate planning business attorney who specializes in trust, like yours truly, that type of thing. Because ultimately, in order to have a legacy of success, a financial legacy of success, that you're going from startup, whether it's operating in the holding company on down, all the way to the point where you can now transfer assign to your family members, assign to your beneficiaries something in a nice clean package, because we got to get out of that liability mindset and start thinking of a legacy of success. So hopefully that was like really good for someone to understand and appreciate. The last time I did this, we just stayed right here on that and we didn't go into anything more. But here's the thing. When you have no long-lasting currency plan, no LLC plan, no brand security, no succession plan, you fail to protect the assets that God gave you, right? And then if you don't have any of that, but you're making money, what I've learned is that literally legacy without money is just a story, but success loves strategy, and bankable brands, they need protection, right? Bankable people. In order for you to help yourself in business, you need some level of protection, right? So when I talk about it, we talk about the CEOs. And in my world, a CEO is the chief everything officer who is making a big impact, who want to build a legacy, who want to secure their assets, and who want long lasting currency. When you do all of the stuff that we talked about, then you understand that there's more knowledge that you need. There's more solutions. It's not just looking at law as a form. You need a formula. It's not just about just having episodic piecemeal work. It's about having strategies. It's not just about saying, oh, I learned this from Tickety Talk Talk, because what Tickety Talk Talk won't tell you is the how. It's just they'll give you enough information to whet your appetite. Even with regards to estate planning, people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about estate planning. The worst time to talk about estate planning is when there is somebody who's sick, or someone, a family member or grandmama in them who now they want to leave the legacy, but now they got to also worry about Medicaid because there is a 5-year look back. So you got to appreciate the long view and also appreciate power moves that you can make so that you don't end up in the status quo. Okay. And so that you don't end up in the status quo, always remember success loves strategy. Okay. So you don't want to have basic BS, basic strategies, bankrupt systems. You don't want to have broke asset businesses. Come on now. Because, a broke asset business will beget a broke asset business, a broke retirement plan. Most people are like, oh my God, I'm only 30. I'm only 40. I'm only 50. Here's the thing. You need the blessing of compounded interest. So the sooner you begin, the better it is for you. Okay. Because a lot of people do not do what they need to do. And instead they end up with a broke asset business and then wonder why their family members don't want anything to do with it. It's pretty bad when people call me up and be like, my mom and dad, my daddy died. Do you think I should even open up an estate? How do I know? But to have closure on an estate, you always have to ask yourself, is it a legacy or liability? Is there some level of, if there are enough money that's over and above? Because if you got to pull your money out, so that you can get 1/100th of a percentage because the person who passed away did not have documentation. So no documentation can end up becoming litigation. And there's so many people with expectancies, right? Or if you're in business and you got all this real estate and things of that nature, it becomes problematic as well. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to understand and appreciate that. Guess what? You got to protect your assets instead of just monetizing them, right? So here's the thing. Take a screenshot. You can legally protect your business by creating a distinctive brand name, because you don't want to famous Amos your brand all the time and it just be the answer to who is you. With regards to legally protecting your business, because when you register your name in the business that you actually operate in, you know what I mean? If you don't, because I have people, they're like, well, I registered my business in Utah, but I'm really working here. Here would be Pennsylvania. Then you have a business in Utah, but you also need to get a foreign business entity in Pennsylvania. So now you got 2 businesses in your business, 2 states in your business, as opposed to just operating with one. Always, always remember, I don't care if it's your mama, your husband, your lover, your bestie, your pastor. Everybody gets an agreement when y'all working together because you're setting boundaries around your bounty, setting boundaries around your business. So that's always a good thing with regards to it. Always, when you're legally protecting yourself in business, covering your assets, you also understand and appreciate that you should have a succession plan. A lot of this we already talked about, in that one slide. Hopefully y'all all saw it, but if you didn't, I'll definitely go back to it because it was definitely something that was worthy of watching. Okay. Can you also see this one? This slide says secure and leverage your brand. With regards to what we had talked already with regards to having trademarking your brand, and you can always go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office on the importance of trademarking your brand. Essentially, if you have a distinctive brand and you don't want anyone else to utilize it or imitate it and say, well, imitation is the best form of flattery, then you have to trademark your brand. It's a legal protection, right? It signifies, first of all, that it's like your name for your author, maybe your author, your speaker, your coach, your motivational platform. Also, with regards to it, you want to trademark the brand for your products and services. If you're doing like the wholesale and flippers club, you know what I mean? And you don't want nobody else to utilize the wholesaler flipper club, then you need to trademark your brand. Because if you don't trademark your brand, then you're opening it up to someone else, or they will. Like if the wholesalers flipper club gets very popular, and people start talking about it, then guess what? If it's not something that you have filed a trademark registration for, then it becomes problematic because somebody else will take it. And in the United States, always remember, it's not always the person who used the brand first. Sometimes, most often, it's the person who files a registration for it. Because under the United States, ideas aren't protected. So you can have an idea of doing something, but until you actually take ownership of it, then guess what? Anybody can replicate it. All right. And the beautiful thing about having a brand that other people want is not that you cease and desist everybody. No, is now you can create a coaching program from it, a certification program from it. You can have affiliates who get a chance to get known and seen and heard. You know what I mean? You can totally leverage that brand, with regards to it. And then not only that, but then you can have a licensing agreement, allow other people to rent, literally like you're franchising your brand without having to do a financial disclosure document. That's pretty awesome and amazing, right? But that's how you create it one time. You monetize it for a lifetime. And then if you want that LLC to become long lasting currency, you monetize it for a lifetime for yourself, for your retirement, for your children, and for your children's children with regards to it. So that's a cheat code as far as I'm concerned. And then what I talk about with regards to securing your legacy. Most of the time when my clients get a certain age, they're like, oh, I want to leave a legacy. The best time to leave a legacy is now. Your legacy is now. Your legacy is listening. So you don't wait until you 80 years old, 90 years old, 92 years old, almost on deathbed and hoping and praying that God's going to forgive you so you can go to heaven. No, you're creating it now because of the fact that if you're building something to last, you're like, okay, I'm building it. I'm being conscientious of it. I'm training up my children in the way that they should go, or having at least a succession plan for my family members. Because most of the time, a lot of people who know that wealth is their assignment and they're creating a business that's in entrepreneurship to expand themselves, guess what happens? When they pass on and they pass down, then guess what? The next generation will bankrupt their estate 70% of the time. Because they did not learn. You already know entrepreneurship, it will try you. It will test you. It will test your Jesus and your God and make you a Holy Ghost gangster. Okay. But if nobody ever did what you did, if they didn't seek, they didn't know, they didn't get through the scarcity mindset, they didn't break through the spirit of poverty, guess what? They're going to get it passed down, but they didn't have to earn. There's no sweat equity. There's nothing in place with regards to it. Then they will lose it. Think about everybody who got, business credit and now they're trying to figure out what am I supposed to do? Somebody was like, am I supposed to pay this back? Come on now. You already know that you were supposed to pay it back. That business loan, you already know that you were supposed to pay it back. But guess what? When you understand and appreciate that you have to be a strategic steward, that's good stewardship. So when you're securing your legacy, it's your legacy of success. Okay. What did you do? You spent a whole bunch of time talking about this for my family, but you left them liability or you left them legacy with money. Because as far as I'm concerned, legacy without money is just a story. But if you want to change the trajectory of your financial destiny, then whatever God got you to do, if you a keynote speaker, then you're going to speak towards legacy. If you a contractor, you're going to contract towards your legacy. If you're a generational, a general contractor, then guess what? You are going to be the GC towards legacy. Whatever your good hands, the good works, you got to leave something. A good man, a good woman leave something. You know what I mean? With regards to it, you got to bless that joint. I just wanted to say that. But how do you do it? You can secure the legacy with property with regards to your business, not a liability, but a business with a succession plan towards an assignment of income. With regards to it, you can have like a hotel and you can assign the income to your charity. Or you can have a charitable lead trust or a charitable remainder trust. You can leave that with regards to that. Yes, build that joint. Okay. With regards to it, insurance policies, you down with OPP? I'm down with OPP. Okay. There is some employee benefit plans that's down with OPP. They understand and appreciate that you can have an insurance contract. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people use insurances. Why aren't we? It's not just about burial insurance just enough. No, it's more than enough. And you taking, I did it. I'm like, okay, $300 away. And this is what I'm doing. And this is how I'm going to bless my legacy and you as well with regards to it. Stocks and money markets, bonds, you always have to be mindful of, anything that's security interest. Security interest is not something that's guaranteed, but the more you are allowing yourself to take the risk, the more likely you're going to get a greater return. If you're not about that risky life, then I suggest that you just have a money market or certificate of deposit, and you put it aside into a bank account where it's FDIC insured, okay, with regards to it. Even some people have trademarks. You can have a trademark. We already talked about how you can franchise the brand, and how as long as you have somebody in place with regards to monitoring what you brought to the table. That's why a trust is good, because sometimes people just have a will, and the will is something like upon your death, within a year or two of your death, that gets transferred out to whosoever will you wrote it down. And if God forbid you pass away without putting things in writing, it becomes problematic, because now it's intestate succession. So if you didn't write it down, you don't will it, it won't get fulfilled. Now you're looking at stepchildren, a estranged spouse who you ain't even talked to 10, 20 years. You ain't get no benefits from or nothing. They will show up and just scoop up your assets and then take from your children, take from your family. Especially if you have a non-traditional family, then you really got to put things in writing, because guess what? When it comes to intestate, they're just looking at, do you have a mom? Do you have a kid? Do you have a husband? Do you have children? Do you have parents? Do you have siblings? So you got to put things in writing. Okay. Otherwise it's going to be problematic and you're going to get big mad, because if you don't say it, if you don't set it aside, then the law is just going to speak up for you. Okay. So 7 keys to protecting your assets in business. We'll talk about it. This is a screenshotable, and covering your assets in business. Okay. Cause anytime you see me say CYA in business, this is essentially what I'm talking about. So you can take a screenshot of this with regards to creating a holding company, securing your business. It's, however many businesses it is, don't do sole proprietorship. Okay. Because there is no way to distinguish your assets from your assets. Okay. It gets all smushed together. I don't want that to happen to you. As a former litigator, if you work in sole proprietorship, then anything you own, your vacation home, your IRA, you know what I mean? Anything you own is subject to litigation. All right. I don't want that to happen to you. Secure it from copycats with a copyright registration. Secure your brand with a trademark registration, right? I want you to license and leverage your intellectual property. It's not, nobody can imitate. It's not even about that. You take ownership of it, and now you allow other people to eat from your table. You secure the table before people start eating from the table. Okay. With regards to it. So in order to cover your assets in business, you must create a financial fortress. In my book, Don't Lose It, we talk about having a financial fortress in place. All right. If you be like, oh, she got some good stuff, but it's a lot of information, then buy my book. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Nobles. It's called Don't Lose It. All righty. Because that's something that I really wanted to make sure that people understood, and not just hear the law and ignore the law. Nah. Law is something that I want you to become better at it. That's why I learn business law, with regards to, I might even have a class for learn business law. Who knows? But, so you can at least learn it. I used to teach it at the graduate level. Then I went over and started teaching it in business school. And then after COVID, I was like, you know what? Later for that. I don't want to just teach students. I want to teach business law to people who need the business law, because business law be business lawing. Okay. And I want you to understand and appreciate that if you're not knowledgeable, because knowledge is power, then you can end up becoming a pawn of your own success, as opposed to the kings and queens that God created you to be. Alrighty. So that's the end of my presentation. I guess we're going to open it up a little bit for questions.
Yeah, and so thank you for giving us that introduction, and just hanging around long enough to allow people to answer any of their legal matters. But I'm going to start it off while we wait for folks to drop their questions in the chat. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get into the law. And then in your experience, what are the biggest legal mistakes people make without even realizing it?
I don't know. It was for me to get in the law. That's just something I knew at 10th grade when I went to a career day. I was like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing the lawyer thing. You know what I mean? It just sounded good to me with regards to it. But I'm sure it had a lot to do with the fact that my mom was a pawn in society and we was piss poor broke. And most people do not protect people who are broke, who have no money. And most school districts don't necessarily protect people who don't have lawyers and don't have any money. And most social workers didn't protect. And my mom was a domestic violence survivor. And I just thought my life would have been better if people were, if we had the protection that we needed. So I'm sure not being heard, not being seen, and being ignored, something inside of me was like, something should, some kind of way, we need that type of thing. Cause I look at business and life as a game. And guess what? With every game, isn't there rules and regulators? And so I wanted to learn the rules and the regulators, but I also wanted to impress upon other people that if there is a rule, if there is a regulation, I'm going to be the one that says, pursuant to this code or this code, you know, helping people stand up. So even when I was doing litigation, I was doing a lot with regards to helping people stand up to insurance companies, you know, hated it after a certain point because here's the thing. Most people didn't read what they were signing. So I couldn't really protect people who signed up for something and didn't read what they were signing up for. That's why I find myself as an educator now. And so one of the biggest mistakes most people make is they jump into business and entrepreneurship without reading the regulations with regards to their limited liability company regulations, reading the rules with regards to starting a nonprofit, reading contracts that they sign. Sometimes people are so happy and grateful to be at the table that they don't know what they said yes to until there's a problem. So that's the biggest mistake people make with regards to it. It's not reading and not understanding that just because they don't know law and just because how I'm going to say it ignorant, just because they ain't got time for the law, that they think that law is going to stop for them. Law don't care. Law is just literally about what is the facts. The facts of the matter is if a regulation is on the books, sometimes people will ignore it. But the worst thing in the world, as I tell my kids, is to need grace. Because a lot of people won't give our race grace. So we got to understand that we got to dot our I's and cross our T's and be on it.
So you follow the national stage a lot, which I love because then, you know, out of the 3 or 4 attorneys that I have, I love that, you know, on the level that you're just well versed in so much because you follow much, right? So Aretha Franklin, she stayed in a state for like 55 years. And I'm not laughing at her death. I'm just laughing at what I said about 55 years. And it was due to a will issue. She didn't have a will. And there was, you know, a fight with her children, et cetera, et cetera. I guess it's self-explanatory why you should have a will, but why, like, is there anything that makes it more crucial that you have a will? So what I'm getting at, some people only think that they need a will if they have assets or if they have, you know, boats and things like that. But I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you would recommend that you have a will in what circumstances?
If you got assets. Like a will is only to pass down something. So being ignorant, once again, if you ain't got nothing, you know, then the likelihood of it is that you don't need to write anything down with regards to it. But when people have a house and a car, they actually have maybe somebody want their fur coats. Somebody actually died without a will and they had children, and one of the children grown to one of my friends and said, what good is it? Mom got all of this stuff. She got stuff. She got shoes and clothing and bags. And guess what they did? They sent that to a consignment shop. Because not everybody wants that, you know, that type of stuff. Most people, if someone passes away, you know, there's a question with regards to who is entitled. I just, you know, one of my friends, she's bemoaning because her mom put her on her bank account, but she's secondary. She's not a co-owner. And I was like, well, how can you become a co-owner? You know what I mean? But see, banks are slickericious because I was like, oh, so you just put somebody on your account. I said, and I told her what you need to do is do a payment on death. So there's some people who don't have a will, but they ain't got nothing. And there are some people who don't have a will, but they assign all of their living interests over to a family trust. And they also have a payment on death beneficiary, which is their family trust, and they have an insurance policy and the beneficiary is their family trust. But there are still certain things in place with regards to, and maybe they have an employee benefit plan and they have listed identified people. But when you have a minor child or you have an older family member and you're the first generational wealth builder in your family, then something needs to be put in writing, some level of instructions, because without those level of instructions, then it defaults to the intestate succession. And some of us, like I come from poverty and abuse, but I know some people have family members whose mom and dad passed away, and they had a brother or a sister who passed away before mom and dad. And guess what? If mom and dad dies without a will and they have family members, their children who died before them, and that family member who passed away, Buki, has 17 different kids. Cause I've seen it happen. I got a phone call 3 weeks ago. A family member, predeceased mom just passed away without a will, and Boo Boo got 15 kids. So now somebody got to hunt down the 15 kids so that they can do a renunciation to renounce their rights, not to receive, but to at least administer. All of that could have been avoided if mom just created a will.
Yeah, I personally, you already know, I personally experienced that with my mother, recently with the passing of my mother. And even though the siblings are still alive, it went down to two of my deceased brother's siblings. They still wanted a renunciation from them that I could be the executor of the estate. So it can really get messy. And, if you have one, it's still, it could be messy. And then if you have a ton of assets, it's even messier. So you want to be careful of that. At what point would you suggest an umbrella company, or for what type of business is this necessary?
It's never necessary. There is nothing in with regards to an umbrella. I'm thinking you're saying parent.
I think she's thinking about holding company, maybe. No.
Holding company just holds assets. That's it. In the ideal situation, a parent company is a company that manages other companies. There's two different ones, with regards to, and a parent company, always remember, just think of it as a parent child. So if that business is raggedy underneath that parent, then guess what? That parent is responsible for monitoring and managing that company. So now not only one company, but two companies can be in jeopardy because of a parent company. And if people really are just about getting that bag and not necessarily about like corporate compliance, SOPs and everything that we just talked about, it's better to just keep everything individual, separate bank accounts. That way you're not smurging this money together. Because for me, the best way to pierce the veil of corporate, the corporate limited liability, promise of limited liability, is to just establish that the foundations is funky, or to go into the banking and see if whether or not people are, playing Robin Peter to pay Paul and not having something in place to protect themselves. Because a lot of people don't do what they need to do with regards to, they have 5 different companies, and you already know that they shouldn't do this, but 5 different companies are getting the money from one bag. Or you might call it an umbrella company or a parent company, without separating. It's always good to be separated, because when you're separating and when you are in compliance with the rules and regulations, that is the best. Always remember, compliance is currency. So it's better to be separated as opposed to be commingled.
Yeah, that's good. And so, Toni, she was using umbrella interchangeable with parent company, but she's asking also what type of business is necessary, but I have a resiliency investment group. It is a parent company. And then I have resiliency wear. That's where statement wear is. I have resiliency resources, which that was around the preparedness. So for my law enforcement background. Then we have Resiliency Works. That was for to help startup businesses as an incubator, right? So, Kirsten, there's no but Resiliency Investment Group actually holds assets and does wholesaling and does a ton of other things. So I hope that answers you. There is no specific business that, you need to do that. Okay, thank you. All right. Then there's a question about your retainer and your consultation fees. I can get that to you, Mo. I'm going to talk to her and see what she'll do for my community. But yes, she does have a fee. Yes, she does have retainer packages. And we'll follow up with you with all of that information on the other end of this call. You kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I think it bears repeating. What is it dangerous to just start doing business without legal paperwork in place?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is if there's no boundaries, right? So when you don't have paperwork, you have no boundaries. So when people have a sole proprietor, there's no boundaries. So there's no distinction between your personal assets and your business assets. So when you're setting boundaries, that's why I'm always like CYA, cover your assets in business, right? Not call your attorney, because even when people call their attorney, but they don't have anything in place and they haven't established anything and their business isn't legal, there's nothing an attorney can do, but tell you, well, why didn't you do that in the first place? You don't even need the attorney to tell you, because if you bemoan anything on social media, there's people like, well, why didn't you trademark it? Why didn't you start your business? Why didn't you go to LegalZoom? It doesn't matter. People are going to tell you to set boundaries in business. And the best way to do it is to distinctify yourself, to be ye separated from your personal assets and your business assets by just making a distinction. Don't do business as an individual. Okay.
Yeah. And, just to add a little bit more color to that, we hear the words, and she alluded to it earlier. You don't want to commingle your life, because if someone comes after your business, then it makes your personal life exposed, right? They have access to that as well. Mm-hmm. And I just want to put this out there in case somebody was thinking this. You can't open a personal account and then say, well, I'm using it for business, right? No, you need a business banking account. Right? Because again, she said it throughout. We want to be able to cover our assets and cover all of this. You putting work in, you're lifting heavy, you are exchanging and you're getting credit and you're getting lines of this and you're building things. It would be a tragedy to have someone just come with a point of a finger and it all comes tumbling down. So we want to make sure that all of this, even if you are, got capital and you are building capital, same thing, that becomes, Toni, this is your wheelhouse, so I can't really speak to it, but you got capital sitting, and someone sues you, that becomes fair game. So now all that hustling and grinding that you did, no, like you have an opportunity to protect all of it, and you really should. When someone is considering hiring an attorney versus DIYing it, because you go in business, and I think I said it earlier, then you need to know how to play the game of the business, right? You need to be, if you're going to play it, know the rules, know what you should be doing. So we're going to advise not to be a DIYer in this space, but what are maybe 3 to 5 things that people should be looking for in an attorney when they're looking for one?
I really don't know, other than the fact that you, understand and appreciate that lawyers, they practice law. So, don't go to a family lawyer looking for somebody to help you file a trademark application. I mean, that's common sense, but some people don't know that. Another one is the fact that you just got to be comfortable. So it's not like what you feel comfortable with, because if they're going to be your wise counsel, then that's one of the things that you should feel comfortable asking them. If they talk down to you or they're speaking above your head and they're supposed to be your wise counsel, it's literally it's almost like your chief of staff. You know what I mean? Like if you can't talk to them, if you don't feel comfortable letting them know, I messed up or I didn't mess up, or, sometimes people are playing the big girl game or big guy game. And they're like, I'm playing a big game, but I don't know what I'm doing. At least be honest, So if you can't have a good relationship and be honest with that attorney, then that's not the one that's for you. You know what I mean? With regards to it. I mean, I see some people, they be like, well, how many clients? They ain't got nothing to do with nothing. You know what I mean? Cause one, attorney is not going to delve into who they protect. Now, if my clients shout me out, then I'm a screenshot that joint. You know what I mean? Or if I ask for a testimonial, then that's one thing or whatever. But you're not really going to know that type of stuff with regards to it, right? If you're looking for a business lawyer and they ain't, look, I'm being ignorant, but if they ain't never start no business, don't know your jargon and conversation and things of that nature, then that's not the business lawyer for you. Because there are some people who hire and they're like, oh, that's my business lawyer. And they don't even know what a P&L statement is. They don't even know the difference between wholesalers and realtors. They don't even know the difference between asset protection and with regards to just having just like a business having estate plan. Because asset protection and estate plan are two different things. Asset protection requires an estate plan, but estate plan isn't necessarily asset protection. Estate plan is just making sure that if something happens to you, there's a continuity plan for how your family is going to benefit from you, as opposed to asset protection. And that's different strategies. They may have you in a different state. You know what I mean? Saying file your holding company in this state. That's not estate planning. So and that's why I said it really depends. I'm pretty smart. I'm gifted in this. God put me in this legal position, but I started as a litigator. I was like the Goldilocks. I was like, oh, I don't like litigation. You know what I mean? Because lawyers play games and I really want results. And I didn't like family law because the law isn't set up for anybody who's brokety broke, or anybody who is financially dependent on a narcissist. Okay. I didn't like that. I did, with regards to, I was about to say sharecropping system. That's what it felt like, because with mortgage foreclosure and bankruptcy, you realize how much you really don't own. So through the years, I've learned different things that I don't like. And I also realized that nobody is really cultivating us to be bosses, but that's a Toni Shawan thing. That's a me thing. You know what I mean? So for you, depends, because some people don't like that I'm a bossy business lawyer who does asset protection. Some people's like, well, I just want a regular estate planning lawyer. Okay. You know what I mean? So it really depends on what your likes is. Terri, you actually like that I'm multifaceted. You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say. So here are what I'm going to look for and what I love about this relationship. I would say, get somebody who's going to be attentive. So there's times that I've said something that someone could steal because maybe she and I were already working on a contract or an agreement, and she has messaged me, be quiet. Don't go down that path, right? Additionally, there has been times she's waking up 5 o'clock in the morning and said, did you do this, that, right? Or I had a dream about you. You need to add this, that. Recently, it was like, what you waiting on? You need to protect your IP. So we started the plan. We figured that out, because I'm a giver, and you have to be really careful because you don't know who's watching on the sideline and who's ready to eat up whatever it is you're doing, however you're moving, and they will subscribe to a process that they didn't even build, right? And then you find out because you are being drawn in because of the litigation and you're fighting behind the 8 ball. And it seems so like, well, who's doing that? You be surprised, right? And so, again, I would say someone that's knowledgeable, not just with what your business is, what you're trying to do. She's a part of my starting 5, right? She's building, literally she's building with me. She's helping me build. And there are things up the road that I don't know or I won't know that I don't need to know. I need to focus on doing my thing and teaching my thing. Let them focus on, the legal part of it and protecting me and seeing if I'm growing too fast or if I'm growing growing too fast, do I have the things in place that'll protect me along the way? Or even if I need to speed up because I'm behind, the time. And then taking inventory. One of the things we're going through as of late is inventorying all of the contracts and documents that I have to see if they're still relevant, right? Or if we need to beef them up, right? Because as you increase, and you all will, in Jesus' name, you will. And so your today is not your tomorrow, but you don't wait to get to tomorrow to plan for it. You put the necessary things in place so that you can grow unbothered, right? Or you can grow unbothered. So yes, yes, yes. And I was waiting, like, double dutch to jump in to say that, yes, I do appreciate that. And, you say, well, why do you have 4 attorneys? Because there are certain things that she just does not do. She don't want to do. Now, and the crazy part is, even though I may have to go to my criminal defense lawyer, or I have to go to somebody who's going to file a private criminal complaint in court with me, I start with her, right? And she knows, okay, go here, go there, call him for this or call them for that, and so you want to, if you're going to be in this space and talk about legacy and generational wealth, you have to understand how that's facilitated. And it's not just about stacking the bread or stacking the assets. It's about all of the protections. It's a part of, I like to say it like this. If you can think about pillars and financial literacy, you got earned income, you got credit and borrow, you got saving, you got protections, you got investing in place. Any other questions?
Legalities of even getting business credit. I went to a training class and they were talking about, credit reporting, but they were still talking about the rules and the regulations with regards to it. So the legalities and everything is something that we got to be mindful of the legal, but also not just, and what I want us to stop doing is thinking that it has to be a thou shalt not. That for law, if we become better at law, once we realize and appreciate law sets boundaries, there's always the pillars and the principles with regards to it. And the same way the wealthy people, one of the things that they understand and appreciate is legacy. Like some people, unfortunately, they were brought into legacy. I went from the projects to the University of Penn. So I met people who had legacy engraved into the spirit of who they are. You know what I mean? It was an understanding that they were going to take over the family business. They was going to meet the trustees of the bank accounts and the board of directors. And they also had a family office in place, and they got a chance to meet. JP Morgan, they knew them by name. They had a trust with their name on it. And a lot of us, we're taking ownership of that. So we're building for legacy. And in building for legacy, we also living. We're walking, talking, living, breathing. But legacy without law is a liability.
That's good. And you guys, if you're wondering, if this term family office is new to you, don't worry about it. Inside of the collective, when we're going to be focusing on our next book is being your own banker and how to establish your own personal and communal economy. I'm going to be doing teachings around the family office and how the Jewish culture do it, how the Rockefellers did it, and bringing that to us so then we can adapt those principles because they worked. And that's how you still see the footprint of those cultures year in. No, they're not, once they die, it's not just they die with a bunch of debt. They die with a bunch of assets and money, right? So don't worry if you're hearing that term. We're going to dive deeper into it. We got Curtis coming just to really go over that book with us and sit with us on that. And then we're going to educate you around how to establish your own with inside of your family. And we'll be doing that inside the collective. In your opinion, what's one costly legal mistake you've seen entrepreneurs make that could have been prevented?
Doing business without a partnership agreement. I'll never forget a couple of years ago, I met someone who had a title company and they built it with somebody who they thought was going to be their spouse, and it didn't end up being their spouse. It was almost like $1 million bust, but they didn't have anything in place, and they did most of the work. But the other person was able to pretty much take ownership of a lot of things. So that was hard. and that happens a lot with regards to the people who we love. We let down our guards. But as a former divorce attorney, I'm like, love them, but love yourself enough to create boundaries. That's where that CYA queen and king comes into play, because you still got to cover your assets. If God gave you an assignment to accumulate wealth and to build legacy, you're going to have to cover it strategically.
Yeah, I remember when I was talking to you about partnerships, and you were like, and I was all ready to go, and you were like, no, we need time to talk through it. It's going to be a JV. What's the percentages? What's she going to do? What you going to do? Who's going to own what? Right? And I'm like, no, I just, I trust her, and you kept backing me up, and thank God, I had a bulletproof contract, an agreement in place that, I believe when we dissolved it, it was clean. It was no issue, because there was built in, and I was 51% owner of it, and so don't think by default, because you take the full ownership of it, that means you actually own it. No, I've learned, and thank God that I didn't have any like costly mistakes. Well, I did, right? I did, but it wasn't costly because we won in the end. But, I guess I should just tell y'all since I done said it. But, with that particular person, I was able, because you had everything built in, it was nothing that if they tried, they couldn't, because my documents and paperwork was airtight. And what I'm referring to, which is why now I have a ton of coaching agreements and at every coaching level, because I call myself trying to help somebody get into the real estate investment space. I allowed them to invest. And I remember Toni saying, well, what agreements did y'all come up with? And I'm like, well, we meeting, is they being recorded, right? And I just wanted to help. And we get to the table, and this person decides that, they were supposed to bring the closing costs, and, because we had a whole plan, but we didn't write it. We wrote it, but we didn't write it in a legal document. And she decided to pull out. I ended up having to pay, but then she came back and was like, well, I want my $5,000 back. And I'm like, well, first of all, the way we got to the closing table, that money was spent based on the transactions that needed to happen. And so she ended up taking me to court, and it's the day of COVID. We ended up getting a tenant judge and now there was two people that I went in that experienced the same thing, sat in on the same meetings, heard the same thing, right? But the one decides to go another route. Now I bring the other person with me to court, explaining everything, and the judge still ruled in her favor. Now my attorney did not, because Toni doesn't do in court stuff. She doesn't do litigation. So we hired another person, and she ain't like him either. Toni ain't like him, but he thought we had a slam dunk because I had all this paperwork. It was understood what was happening. I was coaching her and blah, 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 blah. However, because it was not in a contractual agreement, it was not documented, she was able to say, well, that wasn't my understanding, even though there was another person that showed up to court that was doing that. So anyway, we ended up appealing. She ended up not showing up. Then they gave us another court date. She didn't show up again. So then I got the judgment back. But that initial judgment was $5,000 had to be held up. I was still able to buy and sell real estate, but the title company had to leave that $5,000 of any transaction I had in escrow, because that litigation was still happening. Right now, thank God, that $5,000 didn't make or break me constantly buying and doing some other things, but it could have. That is the point. And so we ended up getting it reversed. All is gravy, but that's an instance where you think like, okay, I'm just going to look out for the cookout, or, I'm just going to help this person get their first property. And, maybe I'll get, we discussed, I'm loaning you this. No, write it down, notarize it. Now I get it notarized, all of the other things, all of the other things. I
What
got a
loss
question.
will teach you.
What they'll teach you, and that, but I'm grateful that was 5,000 versus 500,000, right?
Mhm.
I'm grateful because a lot of people don't have that story. I think people think agreements mean they don't trust the person. Fear of having the other person think that they don't trust them can cost them everything at times. Absolutely, this ain't about emotions. And people buy properties on emotions. No, this is business. These are business transactions. You are B2B with other businesses. So you need to, and that's why, I'm overly stating and encouraging that you need to conduct yourself in a business manner, right? And in doing that, there are some things you need to have in place, and Toni is your girl for that. For those who want to schedule a consultation with Toni, can you just type in the chat, and I'll make sure we circle back to you and get that going based on her schedule and availability. All right. What's one simple action someone can take today to start protecting themselves legally, be it personally and or in business?
The biggest thing I'm thinking that they can do is one, set boundaries in their business. That's the biggest thing. And the best way to set boundaries is to have a system of protection. Kind of like what I had showed y'all and said, screenshot it, your system of protection with regard to just saying, okay, I have what I talk about. I have my holding company. Holding company does not operate. That's your system of protection. I have my operating company, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever God has given you that you can legally manage. Okay. Having a system of protection, separate, making sure that you have a business bank account SOP. There's a book, Profit First. I'm sure Terri, y'all in her group, I'm sure she probably talked about it because she lives by it, live by the code of the Profit First code, with regards to it. I have my own version of Profit First. We call it cover your assets first. You know what I mean? With just either creating foundation for your business or fortifying your foundations, having an income protection program with regards to having agreements all the time, registering your trademarks, right? Literally with regards to, even with regards to, systematizing your plan, you're being very strategic about, okay, this is how I run my business. This is how I hire and fire people. This is how I do business banking. This is how I pay for, how I have my due diligence with regards to partners. If you have a system in place, then guess what? You can be like, oh, that's my standard operating procedures. Like, I'm a business lawyer who does a lot with nonprofits. Of course, people are like, oh, you join my nonprofit. Yeah, that's one thing that I don't do. You know what I mean? I systematically say no. And I systematically, if I'm going to hire someone, I'm systematically going to have a contractual agreement. So no one's, if they're ever offended, kind of like what someone says, or they don't trust you or whatever, I'm a businesswoman. I set boundaries. You know what I mean? And y tú también, and you as well, with regards to having something that is usual and customary, where it don't seem like you picking on people. Be like, oh, that's just the way I do business, with regards to it. And always, 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 with regards to my first, I spelled out foundations, income protection, registering your trademarks, your intellectual property, having your own system of protection. People talk about systems of launching and the system of marketing. You need a system of protection. Okay. Having something in place, and then always remembering that, guess what? We're only here for a brief moment on earth, and if we are assigned to wealth, or we're the first person in our family who is going to create a legacy of financial success, then you need to tap into trust and estate law. Because if you pass away without any instructions, like a will of instructions, or you have family members or children or special needs people or charity that you have established, how's it going to eat? You know what I mean? So having that trust in place with regards to it, what essentially they talk about it a lot and give you a cheat code. They say, what's the difference between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts? And they always talk about being their own banker with regards to having an insurance policy. Well, an insurance policy without a trust is nothing. Because y'all probably already know people that have an insurance policy, but you need to have some system of protection. And that's having a charitable lead or a charitable remainder, or having a revocable trust, that you can buy, sell, trade, and do everything during your lifetime. But once you get sick, then it becomes irrevocable. And having something in place, whether it's an insurance policy or a business. Because Rockefeller had businesses that continually feeds, and he has insurance policies. That's not a cheat code. That's what they do. You know what I mean? I'm heard that success leaves clues. So even when I hear becoming your own banker and the only thing people talk about is having an insurance policy, I'm like, it's more than that. Your girl spent a lot of years doing employee benefit plans. And I promise you,
Absolutely.
those big estates, those big companies with $3 billion is not just in insurance policies, because you got to be able to, what is it, have a influx of money coming in addition to insurance policies.
That's right. Listen, all day long, but yeah. So, if you can't, you shouldn't have one without the other, in my opinion. All right. The last question that I have for people who have aging parents and they're trying to maybe figure out a few things like which direction that they should take for them. What are some legal protections that they should put in place, right? So we know, maybe the will, maybe the power of attorney. Is there anything else that they should consider, for their aging parents?
It really depends. Like if their aging parents also have businesses, then yeah, they need to really talk. If the aging parents have businesses or they have real estate, then yes, they definitely need to have a legacy continuity plan in place and have a conversation, with regards to it. If there's money in place without any instructions, it will lead to litigation. I've seen it. We've seen it happen most recently with a celebrity. They had one family member who was taking care of the table and ignored everybody else. Then you also saw Gene Hackman. He had a 30-year-old will, and they didn't have a succession plan in place. His wife passed away first, so he died intestate. Now the kids is fighting over stuff, with regards to it. But if we want to change our legacy and go from liability to legacy of success, and you have a family member or dad or mom passed away and you still have a family, a mom and dad who's remaining, and that house is in both of their names, get them to transfer the house into their name. Because the worst thing in the world is to have to do two estates 40, 30, 20 years later because somebody didn't do something. Most of the time we become casual. If you become casual with law, you become a casualty of it, because laws don't change. You already heard, I'm sure if you over 40, somebody in your family had a horror story, a divorce, or my cousin Benny, their wife showed up and they thought they was dead, but they showed up 2 minutes after he passed away talking about I'm his wife. You know what I mean? Or having children born out of wedlock and you don't even know. No more secrets, because secrets leads to catastrophe as well with regards to it. If we want to be the change, we got to make changes.
Yeah, that's good. And just because you're a caretaker, and you're don't be so busy that you don't put the right documents in place, because, just because by default you like, oh no, when things happen, it's like, well, such and such took care of them for 30 years. Don't nobody care about that if somebody else is in their ear saying, well, all of you all are entitled to whatever, the deceased had. Right? They don't care nothing about how much you did and gave up and all of that. Get the writing, put it in writing and make sure that you're covered. Because again, even if it don't affect you directly, indirectly, you can be affected by it. And your businesses, we're over here establishing, solid, sustainable businesses, because we want them to last, right? We're building in a certain way. We're laying brick by brick so that, nobody can just blow on it and it all comes crumbling down. We're acquiring these assets in the form of property and land and just some other things that we'll be doing, residential, commercial. We're looking at hotels now and highways and all of the things. You don't want to build all of that and then, either have the other people fighting over it, because if you got siblings, even if you didn't have any children, right? Now their siblings come in play. If one of the siblings are absent, but they had children, now they come in play. And you could have worked all these years building just to leave it to somebody. Now you can say, well, I'm going to be dead. But the living, like, you got to care about the living and understanding, as Toni said, we promised to go, right? And so, how do you leave it is super, super important. So I'm going to give you the final word.
No, I mean, that's ultimately, we just got to become better. We got to become better about law, like reimagining law, not as a thou shall not, but literally as the CEO, the chief everything officer of your life, your business, your legacy, your brand. You got to understand and appreciate that law is there as a regulator. You know what I mean? And as a regulator, it can also be your protector. And also as your protector, then it's only as good as what you allow it to do for you legally, of course. Most of us have been indoctrinated so much so that, you know what, we've been casual of law because workers, all we know is what the master told us. You know what I mean? And if we're looking 14 generations deep with regards to, slave owners, you know what I mean? Slaves didn't have much of a say so, but we're not slaves no more. You know what I mean? And so you got to rebuke that spirit of poverty and rebuke that spirit of being casual with law and understand and appreciate that one, you're worthy of protection. Your legacy is worthy of protection. What you built should not be busted. This is going to be a blessing. And if you really want to protect the blessing, then you got to activate, that's why it says seek wise counsel. You know what I mean? That wise counsel, you got to, with regards to the law and the legacy, and to lessen and decrease the liabilities is the legalities. Rich people, I'm a beneficiary of the Milton Hershey School because guess what? He put something in place and it became his legacy. There's a lot of people who are beneficiaries of scholarships or, for me as a person who went to school, and I always thought probably because of my poverty background and a lot of other things, but I thought that I needed to be validated and my value needed to be validated. So I went to school, got decent grades, went to law firms, trying to go up the corporate ladder and everything. Then I heard about this Black African American woman, Osiella McCarty, and she turned her laundry skills into legacy. And she inspired so many people. So you can look her up and she didn't do all the things that we was doing. So if you're looking for a way to validate your value, God already did that. He breathed life into you. He left this DNA. He gave you dreams and visions and goals. He also warned you that, someone is going to try to steal, kill, and destroy. And the only way to do that is to protect yourself before you wreck yourself. And what I learned is that law is a protector. If you're talking about succession planning, you need law. You need it in writing. If you're talking about expansion, the wealth of the wicked laid up for the righteous, they're not giving it to raggedy people. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that you are who you need to be and establish yourself. Corporatize your assets if you have to, meaning that guess what? Do as the rich people do so that they could see you possibility as a joint venture partner or at least somebody they can invest in. Or at least somebody they can buy out of, or at least somebody they can hire or consult with. You know what I mean? We already know that, 47 in office could care less about people that look like us, talk like us, walk like us. But guess what? The law it doesn't have a respecter. So if he put aside some money for his people, then guess what? You can eat from that table too. You just got to be legal. Okay. Because when you're legal and you stand up for right and you show up and then you get denied, not because you Black or DEI or woman or queer or whatever they took away, but because they have rules in place. The rules in place. A lot of us, our businesses are raggedy. We got to go from raggedy to righteous so that guess what? If somebody tries to take from us and our opportunity, then we can show up in the courtroom. A lot of people don't get those set asides because they're just like, I ain't have time for that. Or I was trying to eat from somebody else's table. But if they got something out there, I want you to be down with OPP too. And I want you to definitely leverage the system in place legally, of course. Okay.
All right, we're coming in for a landing now. I would like for you to answer really quickly. How often should someone review their legal documents? Is there, a certain time or is it by situation?
Which legal document? Like agreements, partnership agreements.
Those, like,
Got it.
agreements, contracts, like, is there, a standard or a best practice, like every 3 years, take a look at what you have? I kind of just rely on you to tell me, Terri, go do it. But for everybody else who may not have that access, is there a best practice there?
Usually if there's like what do you call it? Like a life changes. marriage, divorce, death, you might definitely need to. I was talking to a family member. We did their mama's estate obviously years ago. I didn't know that, and they were just like, we had a lot of family changes and deaths, so there's a problem. If you're starting a business or closing a business, if you have something in your trust, like your schedule, then you definitely need to look and revisit that. If it's no longer relevant, then you need to make it right. If it's something that you have obtained, then, and it's not part of your Schedule A, and that's for like trust agreements and things like that, you need to modify those agreements. So every year, if you know that nothing's changed, then maybe every 3 to 5 years, you know what I mean? But the older we get at a certain age and we start getting a little older, we need to like definitely revisit. And I know sometimes when the family member passes away, sometimes we go back to our estate portfolio just to make sure, and another thing is if you have hanging participles, maybe you have an estranged spouse who's been 20 years deep, and that if something should happen, you can't disinherit estranged spouses. If you don't put something aside for at 33 and the third, then they can come in and wreak havoc and get 50% of your legacy through probate, even unless you ain't got nothing. But then you saw that I was ignorant, even though I'm an Ivy League lawyer. But so you got to put things in place to protect yourself. But if you don't set boundaries and you become casual with law, you become a casualty of it.
Okay. All right. So y'all, it's been wonderful. You can, we captured those who are interested in a consultation, retainers with Toni. We're going to talk and then I'll turn it over to her and she'll facilitate how she wants to for her business. And then, but if you want to tap in with her, and Toni, I'm just going to say what I know. And then if there's any other places, please feel free to fill in the gaps. But she's on Facebook, Toni Moore. Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, Toni Moore ESQ.
And she's always dropping gems. But obviously, if you are serious about business or you have, you want to grow your business or you want to, those are fine, but you need to be able to get with her on a structured basis so that you can grow and you'll end up like me with 25,000 businesses, but that's okay. They all protected because she done made sure of that, right? So, we'll take care of that, but make sure you tap in. She's a wealth of knowledge and information, and she's not just transactional, in my opinion. She tries to be, but she's one that cares. She does try to operate in the spirit of love. She is a believer, so she does very much try to operate from that place, which causes her not to just be transactional, but intimately familiar and concerned with what you have going on. So tap in. I love you as always. I appreciate you so very much. I appreciate the gift and the anointing in you. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with our community. I know we'll see you again. And what do you usually say?
For now.
Watch the Walmart greeter. Bye for now. All right. God bless you all. Have a good night. Yo, we could have talked for days, but because we want you to join us next Tuesday for another episode of Terri Talks, that's it for today. Talk soon.